My name is Violet Hensley, and this is the story I never thought I would tell out loud. Some stories live quietly in the corners of your heart, waiting for the moment when you become brave enough, or tired enough, to finally speak them. Mine begins in a modest white house at the edge of Maple Creek, a town so small that everyone knew the color of your front door and the sound of your laughter. The house had peeling blue shutters that my father always swore he would fix next weekend, though next weekend never came. Our crooked porch leaned a little to the right, as if listening to the secrets our family whispered but never admitted. And the yard, small and stubborn, was where my mother, Elaine, tried year after year to grow roses that refused to bloom for her. I used to wonder if even flowers sensed the tension inside that home. My older brother, Damien, was the shining light of the family, or at least that's what my parents always said. He had a charming smile, a way with people, and a voice that could smooth any argument into silence. My mother adored him. My father worshipped him. Every success Damien had was celebrated with a family dinner, a cake, or a proud announcement to neighbors who pretended to care. If Damien earned a certificate, it became framed and hung on the wall. When I earned one, it somehow disappeared into the kitchen drawer where loose batteries and old takeout menus went to die. Growing up in that house meant living under one rule. Damien was right and I was extra. Too sensitive. Too ambitious. Too loud when I should be quiet, too quiet when they wanted loud. Nothing I did seemed to fit the shape of the daughter they wished they had. I learned early that love in my family wasn't unconditional. It was earned, and I didn't know the rules to win it. But life has a strange way of giving you what your family won't. I found escape in books about cities far from Maple Creek, cities with bright lights, tall buildings, and people who had dreams too big to fit in small houses with peeling shutters. I imagined myself walking down crowded streets in America, working in a tall glass tower, maybe even flying to Europe one day if I ever saved enough money. Those dreams didn't feel impossible. They felt like promises I made to myself. So after college, paid mostly through scholarships and the long hours I worked at a local diner, I moved to Silverford, a fast-paced American city where people hurried everywhere and no one asked about your family history. Silverford became my second chance. The lights stayed on all night, and for the first time so did my hope. I started at a large tech company as an assistant earning $28,000 a year. The salary wasn't impressive, and my studio apartment had walls so thin I could hear my neighbor's alarm before my own. But it was mine, my life, my path. I learned the job quickly, the way people do when they have no safety net to fall back on. I stayed late, volunteered for weekend tasks, and asked questions that other assistants were too afraid to ask. I didn't have charm like Damien, but I had something my family always overlooked: grit. Over time the company noticed. Promotions came slowly, but each one felt like proof that my value did not depend on my parents' opinions. By the time I reached a senior manager role, earning $120,000 a year, I had built a reputation for being sharp, steady, and reliable. I had no mentor pulling strings for me, no family name opening doors. Everything I gained, I earned with sleepless nights, endless research, and quiet determination. My parents, however, never saw it that way. They barely understood what I did for a living and often dismissed my job as office work. Meanwhile, Damien, who worked in the finance department of the same company I did, though he got in through a friend of a friend, was praised as if he had invented the entire industry. My father, Raymond, would boast, "Damien works at such a stable company," never realizing that I sat 5 floors above him with twice his responsibilities. My mother would smile proudly and add, "At least he listens to us." Their favorite line was one I grew to resent: "Damien is doing everything right." Sometimes I wanted to tell them that my job mattered, that I was respected, that I wasn't the lost, emotional child they always believed I was. But every time I tried, they changed the subject or found a way to compare me again. In their eyes, I was a shadow standing next to my brother's spotlight. The irony, of course, was that Damien worked for the same company I did, but he never knew how hard my journey had been. He never knew about the nights I cried in the stairwell after a failed presentation, or how many times I considered quitting because I felt invisible among louder voices. He never saw the hustle behind the scenes. He only saw himself as the hero of our family. Even at work, he treated me like the younger sister who should follow his advice. Sometimes he'd say things like, "Violet, you're lucky to be here. Jobs like this don't just fall into your lap." I never reminded him that his job literally had. I never told him about the hundreds of applications I had sent or the interviews that made me feel small and unprepared. I didn't correct him because I realized his confidence was built on ignorance, and maybe mine was built on survival. In the quiet corners of my mind, I kept telling myself that one day things would change. One day they would see me. One day my parents might say the words they had never once said. "We are proud of you, Violet." But those words never came, not even when I bought my own car, not even when I earned bonuses larger than Damien's salary. They only asked how Damien was doing. That was when the truth settled gently, like snow on a winter morning. My family didn't truly know me, and worse, they didn't want to. And yet the world outside Maple Creek did. My company did. My growing independence did. My dreams, once tiny sparks, began burning brighter with every success. My life was expanding beyond the borders of the house I grew up in, and though it felt lonely sometimes, it also felt free. Looking back now, I see that chapter 1 of my life wasn't about being forgotten. It was about learning to remember myself. For years I gave everything I had to that company in Silverford. My life became a steady rhythm of early mornings, late nights, and quiet dinners eaten alone at my kitchen counter. The fluorescent lights of the office felt more familiar to me than the sunlight drifting through my apartment windows. I skipped family holidays, birthdays, long weekends, and vacations, though I always sent polite messages saying I was too busy or had deadlines. The truth was, my family didn't make me feel wanted, and work, despite its stress, felt like the one place where my efforts mattered. My small apartment was on the 3rd floor of a plain brick building overlooking a cracked parking lot. Some nights, I lay awake listening to cars pulling in and out, people talking on their phones, and the hum of air conditioners struggling through hot summers. None of it bothered me. The apartment represented independence. It was the first place I had ever lived where no one criticized the way I arranged my furniture or the way I hung my pictures slightly crooked. The walls might have been thin, but they heard my goals, my frustrations, and my victories long before anyone else did. While I worked endlessly, my brother Damien filled his life with fun. He bought shiny watches, expensive shoes, and whatever new gadget caught his attention. He took weekend trips across America. New York, Miami, Denver, anywhere with good nightlife. Every few weeks, my mother would call me and say, "Damien is doing so well. He works hard and enjoys life. You should learn balance from him." I always bit my tongue. There was no point telling her that Damien's version of working hard and mine were worlds apart. By the time I reached 31, my savings account had grown to just over $200,000. Money built dollar by dollar through sacrifice. I didn't buy designer bags or new cars. I packed lunch most days and repaired my shoes instead of replacing them. I wasn't stingy, I was focused. Unlike Damien, I knew that no one would rescue me if I fell. Every choice I made was built on knowing my safety came from myself alone. One Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. I was reviewing project budgets when I received an email from Julian Ward, the founder of our company. He rarely emailed anyone directly, and certainly not people at my level. His message asked me to come to his office at 3 p.m. sharp. My heart raced the entire elevator ride up. Julian's office was on the top floor, with wide windows overlooking Silverford's skyline. He was a tall man with soft gray hair and warm eyes that held both kindness and sharp intelligence. People across America respected him for turning small businesses into major companies without losing his integrity. "Violet," he said as I entered, "please sit." I did, trying not to overthink the situation. Maybe I had made a mistake. Maybe the company was restructuring. Maybe this was the moment I would learn I no longer belonged here. But Julian folded his hands and smiled. "I'll be direct," he said. "I'm retiring next month." I blinked, unsure where this was going. "Congratulations," I managed to say. He nodded. "Thank you. Now I need to choose someone who can take my place. Someone who knows this company inside and out. Someone who built it from the ground level, who understands how every department works and how every decision affects people. And Violet, that person is you." My breath caught. For a moment the world seemed to tilt. I thought I had misheard him. "Me?" I finally said, my voice thin. "Are you sure?" He chuckled softly. "You already run this place whether you realize it or not. People turn to you when they need answers. Your work is consistent, strong, and honest. I've watched you grow for years. You've earned this." He then slid a thick folder across the desk. I opened it slowly and stared at the numbers. $500,000 a year in salary. stock options, decision-making power, a seat on the board. It all felt unreal, like reading someone else's dream. We spent almost an hour discussing responsibilities, expectations, and public announcements. The board wanted to introduce me as CEO the following week, but for strategic reasons, they needed me to resign from my current position first. It would create a moment of surprise when the former manager suddenly returned as the leader of the entire company. A marketing trick, Julian said. The resignation would be only on paper. Nothing would truly change except the title and authority. I signed the contract with hands that trembled, not from fear but from the weight of everything I had survived to reach this point. I walked out of Julian's office with the document held tightly against my chest. When I stepped outside the building that evening, the city lights looked brighter. I felt taller. I felt seen. At home, I placed the contract inside a folder in my desk drawer, as if protecting it from the rest of the world. My laptop screen glowed softly in the dim room. Everything felt gentle, fragile, like the beginning of something too big to understand. The next morning, I wrote my resignation letter. It felt strange typing words that made it seem like I had given up when, in truth, I was stepping into the most powerful moment of my life. I walked through the office like a ghost, silent and unnoticed, leaving behind whispers of confusion. No one knew I would return. Not even Damien, who worked just floors below me. And then, as if the universe wanted to test my strength, my family decided to pull me back into their world. Damien's wedding was scheduled later that week in Brighton Hills, a wealthy American city full of expensive hotels, marble floors, and glass buildings that sparkled like something from Europe. My parents spoke about the wedding non-stop, about the venue, the menu, the guest list, Sophie's gown. They never asked about me. 2 days before the ceremony, my mother called. "We heard your job ended," she said, her tone sharp and cold, as if she had been waiting for me to fall. "What did you do this time, Violet?" Her words stung, but not because they were new. They stung because after everything I had achieved, after becoming the next CEO, she still saw me as the problem, as the disappointment, as the child who could never be enough. I opened my mouth to tell her the truth, to say that I was about to lead a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But something inside me refused. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't offer comfort. She only wanted someone to blame. "I'm fine," I said quietly. "I'll be at the wedding." And when I hung up, I looked around my small apartment, the same apartment that held my tears and victories for years. My future was already changing. A new life was forming in the shadows. What I didn't realize that night was that Damien's wedding would be the last time I ever stood beside my family as their daughter. Damien's wedding took place on a chilly Saturday evening in Brighton Hills, a wealthy American city where people smiled too wide and spent too much just to look perfect. The hotel chosen for the event was enormous. 7 floors of polished marble, crystal chandeliers, and tall windows that shone like mirrors. The kind of place you walked into and instantly felt judged even if no one said a word. As I approached the entrance, clusters of well-dressed guests lingered outside, their breath forming tiny clouds in the cold air. They clutched glasses of champagne, laughing loudly as if the world had always been kind to them. I pulled my thin coat tighter around my shoulders and made my way inside. Underneath the coat, I wore a simple blue dress I had bought for $95, a dress that wasn't expensive but made me feel calm. I didn't want to outshine anyone. I just wanted to be present, to be a sister, to show support even if my family barely acknowledged me. The lobby smelled of roses and vanilla, a scent too sweet to be real. It made my stomach twist with nerves. Inside the ballroom, everything sparkled. The ceiling was covered in hanging lights that looked like stars trying too hard to impress. Rows of white flowers decorated every table, and soft music drifted through the air. Yet despite its beauty, the room felt cold, as if the warmth that should come with family gatherings had been left outside on the hotel steps. I scanned the room until I found Damien. He wore a black tailored suit that fit him perfectly, the kind of suit meant to highlight confidence, even if that confidence was built on shallow ground. He stood with a group of friends, laughing loudly, holding a glass of champagne that he didn't deserve. His new wife, Sophie, stood beside him in a white gown with pearl-beaded sleeves. She glanced at me briefly, offering a small smile that vanished as soon as Damien looked in my direction. His smile dropped instantly. It didn't just fall, it collapsed. "So," he said, stepping toward me with that arrogant tilt to his chin, You still came. Even after losing your job. His voice was louder than necessary. People nearby turned their heads, curiosity sparking like fire. My cheeks warmed, but I kept my breathing steady. I didn't lose it, I began. He waved a hand dismissively, cutting off my words as if they were worthless. Violet, don't start with your stories. Everyone knows you got fired. You finally messed up too bad, huh? Whispers grew behind me like a quiet storm. My heart pounded, not from shame but from disbelief that this was my brother. This man who once shared a childhood bedroom with me, who cried when our dog died, who held my hand when I scraped my knee. Now he was a stranger wearing my brother's face. My parents appeared beside him. My mother looked embarrassed to see me there, as if I were an uninvited guest crashing someone else's life. My father crossed his arms, already annoyed. Damien doesn't need drama today, my father said firmly. Don't ruin his wedding. Ruin his wedding? I had barely spoken. I'm not trying to ruin anything, I said gently. I just came to celebrate with everyone. Damien took a step closer. Even though he lowered his voice, the entire nearby crowd could still hear him. You're not welcome here, he said. You're a failure. I don't want some jobless sister at my wedding. My breath caught. For a second the room blurred. I'm not jobless, I whispered. He laughed, loud and cruel. Sure. That's why you left your job right before my wedding. To get attention, right? Attention. If only he knew the truth. I didn't need attention. I didn't need approval. I needed respect. But that was something he had no idea how to give. I looked at my parents, hoping, just once, for someone to stand beside me. Instead, my mother narrowed her eyes. Damien is doing right, she said. You always bring trouble, Violet. Always. My heart felt heavy, but I refused to cry. Not here. Not for them. Damien turned his head and signaled to two large security guards standing near the ballroom entrance. They moved toward us, their expressions unreadable. I recognized the one with the shaved head. Earlier he'd held the door open for an elderly guest with gentle patience. Now he was walking toward me like I was a problem to remove. Get her out, Damien said sharply. Yow. Damien, I started, but he had already turned his back on me. The shaved head guard reached for my arm, though he did it softly, almost apologetically. Ma'am, he murmured, you need to leave. I pulled my arm back, though I knew resistance was pointless. These weren't villains. They were men doing their job. The true cruelty stood behind me in a black suit and a perfect smile. As they walked me toward the exit, I felt dozens of eyes on me. Some people whispered behind their hands. Others simply stared. A few who knew me from work frowned with confusion. They had always seen me as professional, capable, calm. But none of them stopped the guards. None of them spoke up. People rarely risk their comfort for someone else's dignity. Outside, the night air stung my skin. The world felt quieter, as if even the city was embarrassed for me. Through the ballroom windows I could still hear faint music. A soft piano song, cheerful and warm, mocking the coldness I had just experienced. I stood there for a moment, hugging myself, my blue dress fluttering slightly in the wind. No one followed me. No one called my name. Not my mother. Not my father. Not even my brother, whose wedding I had come to honor. The silence broke something inside me. Not violently but quietly, like a thread snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. I lifted my chin, called a cab and rode home in silence. When I reached my apartment, I hung my coat on the hook by the door and sat at the small kitchen table where so many important moments of my life had taken place. The overhead light hummed softly. Then I reached for the folder in my desk drawer, the one holding my new CO contract. I opened it slowly, letting my eyes settle on the printed text. Chief Executive Officer, Violet Hensley. My name. My title. My future. They had thrown out the wrong person. And soon, very soon, my family would understand exactly what that meant. The morning after Damien's wedding felt strangely calm, almost peaceful. I woke before my alarm, the sky outside still pale and gray over Silverford, as if the day itself hadn't fully decided what it wanted to be. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel rushed or overwhelmed. Instead, I felt grounded, steady, ready. I stood in front of my small closet and chose a dark green suit I had bought the year before for $260. A suit that always made me feel stronger than I believed myself to be. I paired it with plain black heels, No jewelry, no family ring, nothing borrowed or sentimental. Just myself dressed for the future I had earned. I ordered a private car instead of taking the train, something I rarely allowed myself to do. The drive cost $45 and I tipped the driver $10, not out of pride but gratitude. Money no longer felt like something to be afraid of. It felt like something I had earned through years of hard work, and now it was finally beginning to work for me. When I stepped through the glass doors of the company headquarters, whispers immediately swept around me like a soft breeze. People stared, eyes widening as if they were seeing a ghost. I knew many of them had heard rumors that I had lost my job, and some probably believed I had come back to beg for another chance. But I walked with my head high. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being misunderstood. The elevator ride to the top floor felt both long and too short. My heart pounded, but not with fear, more like anticipation. The doors opened to the executive hallway, lined with large framed photos of major achievements the company had celebrated over the years. Soon my face would join the wall. My name would appear in articles across America. My decisions would change people's careers. The weight of it was heavy, but it was mine. When I entered the CEO's office, my office, the board was already gathered around the long wooden table. We shook hands, exchanged formal greetings, and signed the final documents. When they updated the system with my new title, something inside me shifted. For years, I had lived in the shadows of other people's expectations, but now I was stepping fully into my own light. They welcomed me with warm smiles, and even though I tried to remain professional, I felt the corners of my mouth lift in genuine happiness. After the meeting ended, I asked the assistant Nora to call Damien to my office as soon as he arrived. I didn't tell her why. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. She nodded quickly, perhaps sensing the tension behind my calm tone. It was about an hour later when I heard a firm knock on the door. "Come in," I said. The door opened and Damien stepped inside without even looking up. He held a stack of reports in his hands, probably believing I was still the same person he had thrown out of his wedding the night before. "I heard you needed these reports for..." He stopped mid-sentence. His gaze froze on the shiny gold nameplate on my desk, which clearly read, "Violet Hensley, Chief Executive Officer." I could almost see the moment his world cracked. The color drained from his face. The papers in his hands fluttered slightly, as if he no longer remembered why he was holding them. What is this?" he whispered. I leaned back in my chair, allowing myself a calmness I had never felt around him before. "I'm the new CEO," I said softly. "Your CEO." He let out a small, breathless laugh, thin, nervous, desperate. "Stop joking." "It's not a joke," I replied. "I resigned from my old position because I had already accepted this one. Yesterday, while you were having me thrown out of your wedding, the company was preparing the announcement." His face twisted, confusion battling fear. He took a step back, steadied himself, then stepped forward again like he wanted to undo the moment somehow. "I didn't know. Violet, I swear I didn't know." "I know you didn't," I said quietly. "That's the point. You never cared enough to ask." Silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket. I could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant ringing of someone's phone down the hall. Damien's hands trembled lightly over the files he still held. "So, what now?" he finally asked. I looked him directly in the eyes. "Now," I said, "you leave your badge on my desk." His mouth fell open. "You're firing me?" "Yes." "You can't do that," he shouted, anger replacing fear. "I can," I said calmly. "And I am. I won't allow someone in my company who believes it is acceptable to humiliate his own sister in public. Security threw me out of your wedding. Today I'm asking security to walk you out of my building." He set the files down with shaking hands. "Violet, please," he begged. "I'm sorry. I was stressed. I was angry. You thought I was beneath you," I said. "You thought I was nothing." Tears gathered in his eyes, something I had never seen from him before. "Please don't do this," he whispered. "I'll change. I promise." I stood, feeling the strength of every moment that had brought me to this point. My voice didn't waver. "This is your punishment," I said. "You will remember it for the rest of your life." I pressed the small button on my desk. 2 security guards entered, the same ones who had walked me out of the wedding hall the night before. "Mr. Hensley will be leaving the building," I said. His employment is terminated immediately. Yes, ma'am, one guard replied. As they guided him out, Damien turned back to me one last time. We're family, he pleaded, his voice breaking. I shook my head. Family doesn't do what you did. When the door shut behind him, a quiet settled over the room. I sat back down, letting the reality wash over me. This wasn't cruelty. This was closure. That evening, back in my apartment, I sat at my small table and opened my laptop. My first CO paycheck hadn't come yet, but I knew it wouldn't be long. I began searching for houses in Lakeside Grove, a peaceful American city I had always admired from afar. I found a 2-story brick house with a wide porch and big windows that welcomed the sun. Cost $750,000, but for the first time in my life the number didn't scare me. A month later my parents called. I let the phone ring until it fell silent. They sent long messages about misunderstandings and family unity. But unity without respect is nothing more than decoration. I replied with one line, I wish you well, but I'm done trying to be loved where I am not welcome. Then I blocked them. Today I sit on the porch of my new home in Lakeside Grove. My house. The evening sun paints the sky in soft orange and gold as I sip warm tea from a simple white mug. Roses grow near the steps, blooming in a way they never did back at Maple Creek. Some say I acted harshly. Others say I should have forgiven them. But they don't know my story. They don't know the years of silence, exclusion, and hurt. Money didn't change me. Power didn't change me. They simply gave me the strength to walk away. I am Violet Hensley, a woman who was thrown out of a wedding and rose higher than anyone ever expected. I didn't lose a family, I let go of a burden. And in the quiet that followed, I finally found myself.